22 News Plus studio. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of In Focus. I am your host, Patrick Berry. Across the desk from me today, we have Gordon Oliver. He is from Cambridge Credit in Agawam, Director of Business Development over there. We are here today to talk about a really frightening concept. It's the growing personal debt crisis in America. You might experience it because most people do out there. Gordon, thank you so much for joining me today. This is it is a scary topic that we're about to talk about. We're going to talk about because more and more people are finding themselves behind the eight ball when it comes to their finances. Are there any specific triggers in your world that you see that point to that? Is it medical debt, unemployment, student debt? Is it anything specific that you can say that's the thing?
At this time, no. Actually, all of them that you have indicated are problematic for people in today's society. If we think about where the world was financially when we had COVID, the world was shut down quite a bit and all kinds of things resulted from that, right? People were doing pretty well. They weren't spending as much. They weren't traveling because they really couldn't. Restaurants were closed to be in person. It was mostly takeout. So you put a lot of those normal things together. Student loans were put on a forbearance for a couple of years at 0% interest with no payment necessary. So you put all those things together, and then coming out of COVID for the last 3 or 4 years, our economy has gone kind of the wrong way with everything costing more to live your lifestyle.
You know, it's really frightening that so many people are in debt. So let's talk a little bit about how Cambridge Credit helps those folks. They come in, you sit down with them, and you break down their finances to figure out what's wrong, and do you help them on a path to a better financial freedom, better financial future?
That's precisely what we do. We've been in business since 1996, so going on 28 years this November. One of the few national organizations left that help people. And what debt counseling is very simply, someone calls us, they have a debt problem. The first thing a counselor that's certified is doing is talking to them about their situation, what happened, what got you to where you are, and let's try to figure out what solutions are available to you and how to fix it. And it's not necessarily a program that we offer. A lot of times the programs that we offer are very helpful to people, but sometimes it's just help the person get square. What's the budget look like? What's the spending plan? How much do I have left over after I pay my bills? And then how do I become debt-free?
I'm pulling up a slide right now, the growing debt crisis, and this is some data you provided me, which this is, in some senses, it's earth-shattering and mind-boggling. Like the average U.S. household credit card debt is $8,000. To me, that doesn't seem so high. I would have thought it was $20,000 or more.
That's average month to month. So think about that. That's revolving that 8,000. Now, the people that we typically see average about 15,000 or more in debt. That's typically who contacts us, because a couple things I want to make note that people might recognize is that when the interest rates in the mortgage industry were at 3.5%, 4%, so were credit card rates lower. But when that industry went up, so did the rates of the credit cards. And now you've got people paying 29, 30, 31% interest. And that's where, when your budget is tight and you don't have that additional money to pay towards the interest, you're just going to revolve that debt forever.
The interest rate on credit cards right now is astounding. I remember I had a credit card, this is probably 15, 20 years ago. And when the interest rate hit 20%, I canceled it.
Yeah.
Right? Now it's close to 30%.
It is.
So if you've got $1,000 balance, which really isn't a lot of money,
no.
In the bigger scheme of things, if you're only paying the minimum, that's $300 a month. And you're never going to get out from under that.
The credit card companies are required now to put on your statement how many months it will take you if you follow the minimum payment. They had to do that because, truthfully, back when I used to do the algorithm and show people it in presentations, they could not believe it's over 300 payments if you just follow the minimums. In today's economy, the problem is if people are not budgeting, they're using credit cards for gas, groceries, and they're making a payment and maybe above the minimum, but they might be making less of a payment than they spent that month. So if you're not paying attention to, you're actually going backwards. Forget about just the interest. That's where getting people square and having a plan is what counseling is all about.
So, how do you at Cambridge, aside from budgeting, help get people on the right track?
So when we talk to people about narrowing down the choices, it's either do it yourself, it's get debt counseling or debt management, which I'll quickly go over. Debt settlement is a product that's heavily advertised out there that people can also do on their own, and then bankruptcy. There's really 4 options when it comes down to it. How we help people specifically is we have relationships with every credit card company that there is that will give a consumer benefits that comes through an approved nonprofit agency. Those are reduced interest rate. The average rate that we get on our program is about 8%. So people are going from 29.30 to 8% with a fixed monthly payment.
Right.
That's typically 25% lower, so we're freeing up money in the budget. And if someone comes behind because they waited too long, the creditor will bring them to a good standing without them making back payments and late fees up after 2 or 3 good faith payments. So it helps people if they're already way behind.
Huge.
It's a huge benefit to help people get back on track.
What about some of those credit cards that offer, you switch from one credit card to the other, 12, 18, 24 months, no interest on transfers. Is that beneficial?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If a plan is in place, where people get in trouble with that is if they do the transfers and they keep transferring once, one balance isn't paid and that due date's coming up, they transfer to another one. There are fees involved in that. And a lot of times the interest typically is a lower interest. It's usually, 0%, something like that. But you have to have a plan. If it's 24 months, you got to divide the balance by 24 months and pay it off.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have a budgeted plan to tackle that transferred balance.
Yeah.
Or else you're just doing the same old thing. What did Einstein say? Doing this.
Insanity.
Right. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again.
Right. So the funny part about when we talk to people about this, the reason debt management becomes an option is because we narrow down with the consumer. Did you try talking to your bank? Yes, but I owe too much and I can't get a loan. Did you have balance transfers? Can you call your creditor, get reduced interest rates? So those are all things people should do on their own. But if they haven't, that's part of the counseling. You try calling your creditors, see if they have a program for you to go on. But a lot of times when they come to us, it's past that and they really need to do something else.
We are up on our first commercial break. We're here with Gordon Oliver from Cambridge Credit in Agawam, talking about the ever-growing personal credit and debt. We'll be right back after this.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back to today's edition of In Focus. We're here in the 22 News Plus studios. I've got Gordon Oliver from Cambridge Credit in the hot seat across the desk from me today. We're talking about the very concerning and ever-growing personal debt crisis here in America. We talked a little bit about, some of the causes and reasons in the first segment, Gordon. But what I do want to do next is bring up this slide that it really kind of talks about the causes of the debt and, some of the workplace concerns and how employers are affected and so forth. We talked. One of my questions earlier to you was: is there one specific cause for debt, medical bills, like I said, and so forth? And you said, like that top bullet points out, all those things play a role. It could be one, it could be, job loss, which is huge. It could be, you had a huge medical crisis, whatever it might be, but they all play a part.
They all play a part. And in the workplace, medical bills is an example. A lot of times the connection there is the employer's providing healthcare, right? So they'll talk to HR and try to see, can they get any additional help with dealing with those situations? Student loans are starting to come into that fold. There are some plans and some tax incentives that are being proposed to help give some money to people that have student loan debt to pay for. So in the workplace, HR deals with everything, right? From the employee's first day, there's policies, procedures, all kinds of things. Debt is one of the things that costs the employer a lot more money than they consider.
How?
Simply because let's just take a manufacturing job as an example.
Okay.
People, manufacturing, usually safety is paramount. It's like the number one thing you have to worry about. And when you are financially in trouble, you are typically not happy, right? So you're distracted. So companies
you're stressing out. You're at work every day stressing out about, oh my God, my kids' medical bills. I got to put food on the table, whatever it is.
Groceries,
Yeah.
energy, everything
Yeah.
costs more now. So when people are struggling, they're not necessarily open about it because there's a shame attached to it, which
exactly.
doesn't mean irresponsibility. It just means I'm in this position. I don't really know what to do about it. So productivity, quality, morale. Think about morale in the workplace. If people
Right.
are not happy, they're going to struggle and not necessarily want to talk about the fact that they're in debt. So looking at some of the things, if you measure all of those key performance indicators, almost all of them can be affected by someone not happy. And this was a mental health
Production
recognition.
goes down at the facility.
100%.
Yeah.
Quality,
Quality,
distracted, right? And safety could be impacted because people aren't as focused, aren't paying attention. And, those are things that an employer has to realize what that costs them in the long run.
So in your work, because if I recall correctly, you work with the Employee Association of New England, EANEA.
Correct.
EANE. Do they work with employers to help create plans within a workplace that helps people with this?
Yeah, with everything HR, that's what they do, right? So
It's like that whole bucket of
the
HR
whole
stuff.
yeah. So they're they consult people on all of that. And the one thing that I brought to their attention, and it took a little time for it to stick, but most employee assistance programs, which are your healthcare, your benefits, everything that you get as an employee from the employer, don't have debt counseling. They have financial advisors, but they're typically focused on investing, retirement, and they don't have debt solutions to provide. So the last thing people want to do, and we've talked about this a little bit, is borrow off the 401k. Yes, they're borrowing a loan and they're paying themselves back in interest, but that long-term growth of that amount that they take out, that they're paying back, doesn't add up over time. So you'd rather not do it if you can avoid it.
It's funny you say that because every financial investor will tell you don't touch that money. However, you think, oh yeah, all right, I need 50 grand to pay for, these major house repairs I've got. Pick your expense, but I'm just going to pay that back with interest. But the period of time that 50 grand is gone, that 50 grand is not gaining more money in your account.
Right. And that's what the strategy is. Get in as early as you can for as long as you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the message that financial advisors give. But adding that component, and we were just at a summit with EANE, and every single time we brought this up, are people coming for 401k loans? They are. They're coming to borrow off their 401ks. So HR people know it. There's a reason that people are borrowing off their 401k. And a lot of times it has to do with debt. The problems with debt in credit card, and we've seen this from some credit unions that we work with, people borrowed at low rates, took home equity loans out at 4% interest,
Right.
and then paid off credit cards. And now because everything got more expensive, they have an equity loan, and now they have their credit card balances up again.
Oh,
so that's the worst thing that can happen.
Right. It's just
and that has happened a lot. We see it a lot.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and I use that term, the snowball effect. And again, it's a pride thing, I think, and I'm guilty of it too, and I think most people are. I can handle this. I got this, but then it gets worse. Then that credit card bill's $9,000 next month, and then 3 months from now it's $10,000, and then it's next thing you know it's $12,000. Then Christmas hits, and now it's $13,000. Oh, I gotta take the kids on vacation. Now it's $15,000. It's just, I got it. But it just snowballs.
This is one of those time frames where people just opened up the bills from the summer.
Ugh.
Summer and holiday spending is not too different because summer's a different dynamic for many people for many reasons. If it's kids, it's camp. How are the kids getting taken care of while we're at work? So those bills are starting to come in now, and this is when we get tremendously busy. And then it slows down a little bit during the holidays, and then we get slammed January, February, March because people spent what they spent. They don't really think about it. Then they come back and they have to deal with it.
So do you see your work with clients as cyclical, like end of summer, beginning of year, sort of? Okay, we've been hit with the summer bills, and this in the September October range, and then in the January February range, it's like, oh my God, we just got hit with the holiday bills.
Those are the spikes for sure.
Okay.
Those are the spike times for very simple reasons. But it's not like we're not. The last 2 years we've been busier in the summer, which most people don't. We slow down usually in the summer, but this last 2 years we've been pretty busy in the summer as well.
So, the interesting thing is debt is not just mom, dad, or the adult in the room. Kids pick up on it too.
They sure do.
They know that, we didn't get to go to Disney this year. We went to Lake Compounce, or like compound's still around.
I
You
think
know what I
so.
mean?
I think it is. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's that sort of thing. Kids pick up on it. But do you think it's okay for parents to sort of, to a certain extent, open up with their kids and let them know?
100%. Because at some point, those children are going to deal with this in their life, right?
Yeah.
And the worst way to have that happen is get into the real world and figure it out. Many people have had to do that. If you're part of the conversations, it helps deal with emotions. It helps deal with understanding when we have to say no, why. It's also, listen, we bring money in. Here's a paycheck. These are my taxes. The taxes actually come out. It's a learning. It's a financial literacy exercise that's a lifelong journey, right? It's lifelong learning.
There are a lot of organizations out there working on creating generational wealth, but not a lot of organizations trying to stop generational poverty.
That's true.
And this is where you and your organization, correct me if I'm wrong, get in there and try and stop that.
If I just tell you real simple, a $15,000 credit card debt at 29% interest,
You're never going to get out.
You're never going to get out of it, and you end up paying like almost 2.5 times if you stay to the minimum payments of what you started with. So if you're going to work on generational wealth, there are ways to do it both ways. You can still invest in retirement and still work down your debt, but it's all about recognizing it, having a game plan. And once you get to a level that's reasonable, either keep it there or work to get to zero. And I try to tell people this all the time because being in the business, I've made my own way of things. I don't carry a balance. I use it for reward points and whatnot, but I pay it off weekly.
Absolutely.
Because it's in my budget, right? That's how I plan it. But that's it. And I say this all the time because it is a stressful situation. There is always an answer and there's always a way to recover. It's just, when do you get to that point to try to say it's time to do something?
When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation and with some strategies to help you get out of debt. We'll be right back.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to today's edition of In Focus. I am your host, Patrick Berry. We're having a pretty intense conversation about personal debt and the growth of personal debt over the course of the last few years and the causes and so forth. But Gordon Oliver from Cambridge Credit in Agawam is here. We've covered a lot of reasons why why the debt has grown so much, but now we're going to get into some of the strategies and ways that you can help get yourself out of debt. So Gordon, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. Greatly appreciate it. Cambridge Credit that's what you do. You help people get out of debt and understand their finances. So what are some of the simple strategies that you can talk to us today about, to our viewers and help them get out of it?
Yeah. So it needs to be said, we're at 1.2 trillion outstanding in credit card debt. About 5 years ago, it was about 840 billion. So that just tells the tale, right? That tells the tale that there's a growing problem. As far as individuals are concerned, and dare I say it, we're facing government shutdown discussions again, right?
Yeah.
In that regard, some people are going to be displaced for a little while. So one of the things that we talk about always, regardless of the situation, you have to have a spending plan.
Absolutely.
Got to dictate in your documentation what you're bringing in as far as income in the household, whatever that amount is, and where it's going out. And when you do that, if you have one now, another one to do at the same exact time as a crisis budget, because situations that are out of your control, like what we're talking about now, you want to have a game plan when you are in crisis, because usually when you're in crisis, you're not really thinking as clearly as you can.
Right.
So budgeting is the number one most important thing that people must do to try to get a hold on a game plan, whether it's getting debt reduction or if it's investing and trying to become generationally wealthy.
Right. Yeah. I just pulled up the slide of data that you provided. The first one is something that was instilled upon me from a very young age. My parents were Depression era people, so they knew how to scrimp and save and whatever. Live below your means.
Yes.
I think in today's age, that's easier said than done. Things are just so much more expensive than they were when I was a 22-year-old with my first job and trying to make my way. I bought my first house at 30. My kids are almost 30, and there is no way they're buying their first house at 30. Just things are much more expensive today, but still, it's a good rule of thumb, live below your means.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about when you and I were children, right? We didn't have a device that if we say jeans, an advertisement pops up and tempts me to buy a pair of jeans. Then we go through a time frame where the economy was shut down because of a pandemic, and online shopping now became the hobby, the habit, right? So advertising is something that you have to know that is going to be tempting you to do things, and you've got to have a plan one way or the other on how you're going to handle your spending.
The interesting thing is that most people live paycheck to paycheck, and there's some information right there on the screen. 61% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. This is frightening. What does that say? That is a third of those people, that 61%, earn $250,000 or more. So I see that as they're not living within their means.
Yeah, I mean, you make it, you spend it. That's
Right.
the thing that you have to look at, right? What are my habits? We talked about learning from your family. That's exactly what you learned, right? You learned it from your parents because they came from a time frame where there was none of that.
Yeah.
They were looking to survive, right? Get food on the table.
My parents' entire lives was thinking the depression's going to happen again.
Yeah.
I got to be prepared.
Yep, and that created some habits, right?
Look at 2008,
and they pass it on exactly. They pass it on to you. Which is why the family dynamic, it's good to have these discussions. You build literacy is one thing. The term financial literacy is thrown around a lot, but it really is financial literacy and the habits that are required for you to build to have a good financial way of things.
You know, it's interesting. I'm going to pull that screen back up again. There are a number of different things on this screen for folks to pay attention to, and I hope you'll kind of go back to the 22 News Plus app 22 News Plus app and watch it. But second one down, 50-30-20 rule. What is that?
It's basically, so there's several ways you could do budgeting. The first one is obviously a sheet that has all of the expenses and income categories listed. We have on our website, it's called My Money. You can go in there for free, create an account, and it's modular. So it helps you build your budget through modulars of spending.
So let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
That may sound tedious, but it could be your lifesaver.
I want to make sure we cover this. It does. The first time might be a little tedious. Where it gets a little bit tedious and a requirement for you to really have a good handle on what you're spending, journalizing your spending is when you take a month's time, and usually you do this 4 times a year, and collect every receipt, every ATM slip. Make sure you document what you spent if you took $200 out, so that you can say, I spent, or in my budget, I have earmarked $650 for groceries.
Right.
You add those receipts up that month, and you find out you're spending $820. 2 things have to happen. Either you have to decide to cut that spending, or you have to adjust that budget, which then impedes the amount you'll have left over for savings. 50-30-20 is just another way to prioritize how you're going to do those things.
Okay, we're down to about a minute left. What's the 30-20?
The 30-20, so 30 is for wants and needs, and 20 is for savings.
Okay.
So 50 is priorities. You know, you got to have the priorities paid first. That's where, when a crisis budget comes in that regard, you'd be paying attention to that one column, right? Because those are the things you have to pay.
Unbelievable. Gordon, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. Such valuable information that you shared. I'd love to have you back on to talk personal finance and personal debt and managing it, if you'd be open to that.
I would love to. This is anything that we can do to get in front of people to let them know that there are solutions. It's important to know that there are safe places to turn, and Cambridge Credit Counseling is one of them.
Excellent. Thank you, my friend. Good seeing you.
Thank you. Good seeing you as well, Patrick.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.